Hi, welcome back. Well, this would have to be an age of doubt and secularism where people of faith, even themselves, are wondering, what do I believe? And here to help us negotiate this is Nathan Brown. How are you, Nathan?
Doing well. I'm not sure I'm an expert and I'm not going to negotiate much.
Well,
we can have a chat.
The title of your new book certainly doesn't sound very expert. Why I Try to Believe. That's awfully tentative. I mean, you're
not sure it's awfully tentative. I would say healthily tentative.
Healthily tentative. Well, why did you pick that title? Why I Try to Believe?
To some extent, it's a confession that most of us, even on our best days, there are questions. Mm-hmm. There are things that we can admit that we don't have all nailed down. It's an incomplete science. Our faith is, it's not something you prove. It's not something. Jesus seemed to accept the idea that the statement of "Yes, I believe, help my unbelief," was good enough.
Yeah, one of my favourite.
He affirmed that, and I think there's a little bit of that in that title.
So, Nathan, in this book, Why I Try to Believe, you deal with some fairly, classic objections or doubts that people have when it comes to faith. I mean, the problem of pain and suffering, for example.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would characterise this book as a gentle apologetic. Would that be a fair description?
I think the term that I invented in the introduction to the book is a personal apologetic.
Okay.
And so, soft apologetic, gentle apologetic probably works. But I've kind of taken a personal approach to it. And if somebody simply says, "So what's your book about?" I would say, well, it's the things that help me make sense of my faith and to make sense of life and to make those decisions that we do make in life about what's important and good and meaningful and true.
Okay.
It's not necessarily wrestling with the big philosophical dark night of the soul type things, but they're there in the lived experience of what life is and trying to maintain and sustain a life of faith in the midst of those experiences.
So if I had a friend who says, I don't believe in God, I can't believe that there'd be a God who would allow all this suffering, to happen, which we hear, fairly often. Is this the book that I then hand to my friend and say, this will sort you out, this will prove that you're wrong and that God does exist? Is that the purpose of this book?
No. I don't think it's that book. I think it's probably more the book that would raise some questions and perhaps say, here's a different way at looking at some of those questions that we all, as human beings, confront. Life just throws these questions at us in the experiences that we come at. So I'm not sure I'm trying to prove anything in a solid, logical, argumentative sense. What I'm trying to do is raise questions and to say, well, here are some of the answers that help me wrestle with those questions.
Okay. So it's, in some ways, it's sort of very postmodern. You're sort of saying, well, this is the truth that I've discovered that works for me. Let me share that with you.
And see what you can do with it.
Yeah, it may work for you, it may not.
And ultimately, without wanting to give away the punchline of the book too much, ultimately I see faith as significantly a matter of choice, more than a matter of proof.
Okay.
And that's where we get to in the last chapter of the book, is looking at the choice that we're presented with. I think along the way we've looked at some reasons why that choice may be a legitimate choice to make. But there's something in faith that actually, in the definition of faith itself, is that it's the things we haven't got sorted out. Because that's the role of faith, is to say, okay, I don't have all the answers, I don't understand it all. To borrow the biblical phrase, we see through a glass darkly. So we haven't got the beginning to the end of the story all mapped out. But this is how I'm going to choose to live because of these things that suggest what is good and true and right and beautiful and meaningful. Okay.
So is this book readable for an atheist, say?
Yeah, I would hope so. Part of the spark for the book was a friend of mine who has experimented with atheism.
Well, it's not just this is someone who's this is Ryan Bell, isn't it?
Yeah.
From the US, who who said, I'm going to spend the next year spending a year without God, living practically as an atheist.
Yeah. And so he's someone who was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine, and has been a part of the conversation of writing the book. He's written a foreword for the book, which I hope is an interesting model of we can talk about these things even without, and basically we make a different choice at the end of the conversation.
Wow.
And I think that's an important thing to do. It's not always an easy or comfortable thing to do, but yeah, I think I'm hoping that part of the story of the book is that conversation.
Okay. Have you had any feedback from, I guess, discounting Ryan Bell, obviously, because he has that sort of believer's background and is used to reading this sort of thing. Have you had feedback from readers who don't have a particularly religious background?
It's kind of, I'm not sure there are, yes, definitely there are people who don't have a religious background, but most people in most Western societies have some religious starting point.
Oh, okay.
But in the context of, I actually wrote, part of the impulse for getting the book written was a university assignment. It was the final project for a master's degree in writing, and I had a quite secular, someone that wasn't used to reading that, who was my supervisor for the project.
Okay.
And we had some good conversations in that context as well, and she was very supportive and encouraging. She said, I found this book humble and refreshing.
Wow.
And when she used those two words, I said, that was kind of what I was trying to do.
Humble and refreshing, there you go. So, and obviously for someone who is a person of faith and has questions and doubts, this would also work for them as well.
Yeah, it draws on my own experience of growing up in a church setting as a
pastor's kid.
Pastor's kid, and so it's not the dramatic conversion story, but I think coming through some of the experiences that are in the book, it is the gradual conversion story of making an inherited faith your own.
Okay.
And that's just an important part of the process.
So Nathan, if I wanted to check this book out for myself, or I have a friend, that I think this would make a great gift, what's the best way to get hold of Why I Tried to Believe?
Well, you could ask for it at a Christian bookstore near you, and they'd be able to track it down for you, if they don't have big piles of them on the shelf. Also available from hopeshop.com.
Okay.
And just search the title or the author and it'll work.
Okay, well there you go. And look, we also are offering 12 of these for free to our viewers. You're going to have to be quick though. If you send us an email, letters@infocus.org.au, and also you'll need to send us your address with that so we can get it to you. We'll send a copy out. Compliments of Nathan and Record in Focus.
Fun to be able to give a few things away.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time today, Nathan. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem, thank you.
We'll see you after the break.